Marco here in Victoria today with David Langlois, managing broker of McDonald Realty. Big news from the government in terms of legislation. I want to specifically focus on the legal non-conforming units that are being heavily impacted in Victoria, BC. I consider you to be the expert in this field. Give us a bit of a history on these units, why people bought them, and how they're being impacted with this legislation.
Sure. Yeah. So let's start at the beginning, I guess, when the first round of regulation came in back in 2017. One of the things that the city of Victoria did was eliminate the transient use from all zones. There was something like 168 different zones that were amended, and they did it in like 3 weeks, which was impressive. But while government has the right to eliminate the use within a particular zoning area, what happens is that use can continue under a principle of legal non-conforming use. That flows from the common law principle of acquired rights, or the doctrine of acquired rights, or vested rights. And that protects landowners and provides security for all of us to know that if we buy a piece of land or we have a property that we're using for a particular purpose, and if the political winds shift or change, the whim and fancy of a particular group who happens to be in power decides that they don't like that use anymore, you're protected. And that's one of the hallmarks of a civilized society, frankly. One of the hallmarks of a banana republic are, I don't like that thing anymore, so that thing goes away. So that's what happened. So you had approximately 30 to 40 buildings that potentially had legal non-conforming use for transient rentals available, short-term rentals. Of those, a number already had bylaws that prevented their owners from being allowed to rent. And again, of those, some buildings passed bylaws saying you couldn't do short-term rentals, which is fine. A community, a strata can make that decision, and you have to respect it. So that left approximately 24 buildings or so, depending on how you count them,
yeah,
right? So the peninsula is the peninsula one building, or is it three? The 20 different addresses, but let's call it 24, with a total universe of approximately 1,600 units, in which legally you could carry on the short-term rental activity
With a license.
Well, and then they introduced the licensing scheme. So the business license for a short-term rental was set at $1,500, which is the most expensive business license in Victoria, other than for a pot shop.
And it was recently amended to $2,500
right.
before the legislation came in.
Well,
right?
I think that was 2 weeks ago that they amended it to $2,500. And so those of us who have been in the legal licensed business of short-term rentals have been calling for all levels of government to enforce the existing zoning rules against illegal ones. We agree that illegal ones should go away. They shouldn't be done, right? Basement suites shouldn't be allowed to be short-term rented. Laneway houses shouldn't be allowed to short-term rent. But the legal ones, we're legal. We're legal and licensed. It's not a loophole. It's a legal principle. It's kind of like the idea that if we were to decide tomorrow that we don't like bakeries, well, the guy that owns a bakery still gets to own a bakery, even though we don't like bakeries anymore. So we can't ban bakeries overnight, just as the government in this instance is attempting to ban this particular use without compensation, and they're probably going to run into a problem here.
Yeah, personally, having sold 7 or 8 units at the Janyan, people bought these units in these buildings under the assumption that they were operating legally, which they were.
They are.
And now their business is being removed from them. It seems rather unfair.
Well, it is very unfair. Not only is it unfair, but it's unprecedented. And so regardless of where you land on whether you like short-term rentals
or not, exactly.
What the underlying issue here is this idea of vested rights, of property rights. And if you fall in the camp, they're like, I don't care, I don't think there should be short-term rentals, strip their rights away, well then you won't really have much grounds to complain when they come after the next thing, or when they make rules that strip away other people's property rights, right? It's that whole idea that they come for me today, they'll come for you tomorrow. So it's the principle that is important.
It's the principle, and that's why I wanted to talk to you today. It's whether you think short-term rentals are okay or not. The principle of property rights, I feel like, is being infringed upon.
Well, it's a difficult situation because in Canada we have no constitutionally protected property rights. It's not enshrined in the Charter. What is in the Charter is Section 26, which allows for which recognizes that we do have rights that exist outside of the Charter. Just because it's not in the Charter doesn't mean we don't have these rights. And these rights all flow from the common law. Where it gets complicated is that the common law can be extinguished by legislation, but it's messy. And it's been long held, and over 100 years of cases in Canada and the Supreme Court and other jurisdictions have long held that any expropriation, economic or otherwise, must be accompanied with compensation. And so when we look at the numbers for compensation, they're pretty significant, right?
No, I agree with you. It's going to be an interesting few months. I really value your opinion on this, and let's see how it transpires.